Good afternoon. My comments about Alden from the perspective of Silver Lake Conference Center need to be prefaced with a profound sense of gratitude and thanks to Alden's family for sharing him with us at the lake and with the thousands of lives that he came in contact with over the years. We are so indebted to all of you. To Ruth, his wife and partner for these many years, you've been a support and sounding board. I am sure a source of advice. We acknowledge and thank you for your presence with him and just for who you are. All the comments that I make today and the remembrances that are shared by all of us to you are set within the framework of your presence alongside of Alden. Don and Marcia, David and Annie, Ann, can't call it Annie anymore, she's grown up. We thank you as well. I know as my children have blessings and curses of being preacher's kids, our kids are shared with a larger body, and sometimes we can't even claim our own parents. Alden was set in that same situation, and you had to share him with us. You are part of the blessing that we all have. Our prayers and our supportive thoughts and our love are with you during these days. I was told I wasn't going to be funny. I was supposed to be serious, and I don't know. Oh well. All my good jokes I didn't put in here. Oh well. All right. Anyways, one of my many memories of my time shared with Alden was during the winter of 1976, when I was living at Silver Lake, and I would meet Alden along with George Eaton, who was back here, down in the Cedars dining room for coffee in the morning before we went off to work. We would walk into the door of the loading dock, and you would hear the echo of WTIC, the smell of fresh coffee, and as you walked into the main dining room, you would hear the morning show hosted by none other than Bob Steele. It was a daily ritual that we all had. And one of Bob Steele's daily events was the word of the day. Now, Alden and George and I would sit there as we ate our breakfast or had our coffee and talked about what we were going to do for the day, but we always stopped when we came for the word for the day because we always wanted to know what the word for the day was. And Bob Steele would say the word, pronounce it very clearly, and then try to give an explanation of a definition and how you'd use it. And then Alden and I would try to use that word as much as possible for that day. Today's word of the day is vision. When I think about Alden, and I, like so many of you here, and those who are not even able to be with us, have thought of Alden this week, reflecting on who he was and what he meant to us, and how he impacted our lives and the life of one special ministry setting within the United Church of Christ, Silver Lake Conference Center, the word vision keeps coming to me. Alden was a straight shooter. He told you what you thought. He always looked you straight in the eye, especially when he talked to you, and kept his sights on you even as you walked out of the room. With every interaction, you knew he loved you, he cared for you and about you, and you knew that he would tell you the truth, except for if he was playing a prank. But in seriousness, I do think that Alden can be described best by using the word vision because of its many meanings. When Alden was hired as a manager at Silver Lake in the early 1960s, the idea of a summer conference center was still in its infancy. He and Ruth moved from suburban Glastonbury to the rural roads of Sharon, And they found there a house, a road, a modern, newly built retreat center, the lodge, some camp buildings from the previous incarnations of camps that operated in that location. My friends, to do what Alden shaped and crafted what Alden shaped and crafted to what we have today took vision. The Glen, the Pines, and the Cedars, which were projects that rose out of that vision that Alden had for that place. To have a place that young people would want to come to, needed to have buildings and infrastructure, a place for winter and summer activities. That man with the crew cut and glasses oversaw the summer work crews and the off-site workers that built those buildings and made other many, many improvements to Silver Lake. When Alden was first called, he was called as a manager, believe it or not. Had little to do with program. That was left up to Dean Hodges. But that changed over the years, and he poured himself into the place and the people and the mission of outdoor ministries in this special piece of land. Now, some of you have had many stories swirling around in your heads about those projects and other things, and I'm not going to go into those right now because that would detract, I think, from the really important event of celebrating Alden's life today, at least for the part of the life he lived out at Silver Lake. Alden had a vision of life that included how one looked at life. He wanted us to consider our vision to look at the world and ourselves as a partner with others on God's gift, the planet Earth. He had as an overarching theme, everything in all creation was a sacred gift from God. Each and everything had value and deserved respect and stewardship. He also had a vision about hospitality. You saw that those who worked there he stressed hospitality in our work. He told me once, we have 3 things to offer those who come to Silver Lake: a clean facility, good food, and a warm greeting. Without it, he said, you might as well close the doors. And he was right. It was instilled in those who worked there that we were there to serve the conferees or the retreat participants first, and ourselves second. And that is something that I carry still as an important benchmark of hospitality. That was his vision. His often repeated opening greeting to conferees: I ask you to love yourself, love your neighbor, and love God. If you do those 3 things, I know you'll have a great week. With that, he pressed everyone who came to Silver Lake, every conferee, counselor, dean, staff person, to have a vision beyond themselves. For a world to survive in a healthy manner, we had to think of welcoming the other, taking care of the other, support the other. Now I, much like my previous speaker, must pause and note that Alden would be very uncomfortable here with these comments in such a public setting. He was always the one who pushed the spotlight away. He knew that many held him up as a mentor and loved him dearly, myself included. And he always took it in stride as part of his ministry. And he did it all with a sense of humor. Now, Alden to me is one of those original environmentalists. We shut the lights off today to save money. Alden would get after us to shut off the lights, not because of money, but because the energy that we waste belongs to someone else. And that was when electricity was relatively cheap. The same was true for him of heat, water, and all of God's nature. Let us not forget that Alden was a builder and craftsman, a man of practical common sense. He knew that if you had to do something, you did it right the first time. Because you know what happens when you skimp. You end up doing it all over again. And I know that from experience. Anything worth doing is to be done right the first time. His vision also extended into family systems and teams. Camp staff was put together very deliberately, he used to tell me, so that there was a balance of people and personalities. No staff with all Indians and no chiefs on his watch, he would say, or vice versa. He had a vision of Silver Lake as a training ground for leaders. He probed everyone's desires for their future, listened as young person after young person used him as a sounding board, those who needed some wise, sage advice. He planted quite a few seeds in the hearts and minds of people who today are doctors and teachers, community volunteers, Peace Corps volunteers, corporate leaders, local church leaders, administrators, therapists, as well as clergy for whom we've probably lost count now, must be over 200. He saw in young people the potential to become what they felt called to be. He helped people to discern their futures. He took the time to do that. He worked to enable them to capture a vision for their lives and then encouraged them to work towards that vision. As we have just heard, also Alden served in the church in many other ways, here in Salisbury, but also in communities around the state and on a national level. He and Ruth are still held up as role models for the newer generations of outdoor ministry leaders. It's his vision they want to capture. What makes this man tick? His expertise was used for the good of the Connecticut Conference of the United Church of Christ. As he served as property manager on countless committees, as he looked over Ingram House and United Church Center, and all the other facilities that the conference had. He led groups of young people to Puerto Rico and to Deborah Home, where he shared his vision, his work with the young people there. Lastly, but most importantly, Alden Tyrol had the vision to see himself as an intricate part of the Christian story. A person of deep and mature Christian faith, he saw his role as being one who was a servant for the larger good of the church and for the bringing of the kingdom of God to right here on earth. Those of us who gather today from all over the country, by the way, and those who join us in spirit from in other places, may have had our faith strengthened there, or may have come to leave that place with our seeds planted and watered just a little bit by Alden Tyrol. He had the vision to see that Silver Lake, in his role as a leader of that conference center, could have such a positive effect in God's world. He encouraged people to have faith in themselves, in others, and in God. I want to end with a quote from John Cooksey, scary as it is. John had a quote from Alden in the Facebook remembrances this week. It really captures Alden. John writes, "I remember Alden saying near the end of the summer at one of the last camp staff meetings, Alden said this: 'You will depart from here with lessons that you may not apply in your life for months or even years to come. Some of you will never apply them. But you will have them, and other lessons too. And when you least expect it, you will use them, maybe way into the future, but you will use them.' And then Alden, with that typical smile of his, would say, 'Now go forth into this wide world and remember where you came from.' Alden Tyrol had a vision for each person, a future where God would use each person according to the gifts bestowed upon them by God. Maybe God is right. Maybe Alden is right. Maybe we should go from this place, remembering where we came from, using those lessons. So thank you, Alden, for being a part of my life, a mentor to me, as well as for thousands of others. Your vision has been imparted and received. I will miss you, but I know that you instilled your vision within me and so much more. Maybe even I caught a glimpse of the kingdom of God here on earth. And I have faith, no, a vision, that your legacy will live on. God bless you.